Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Good evening. I will call the April 1st Select Board meeting to order. I don't believe that there are any changes to the agenda. Just note there is an HDC appeal towards the end of our agenda that we will be continuing until April 29th when we get there. And otherwise, I will turn to announcements from the town manager.
Thank you. This meeting is being video and audio recorded. It's not on here because it's just happening after the agenda came out, but the March-April Town Manager e-newsletter will be out tomorrow. The town has been awarded a $30,000 historic survey and preservation planning grant from the Mass Historic Commission for our certified local government community project, which will help create a preservation plan for the island. And thank you to Holly Backus, who worked hard to get that grant for us. The Nantucket Affordable Housing Trust is accepting nominations for the 2026 Dr. Howard Dickler Citizen Award. It honors a community member who demonstrates exceptional voluntary leadership and advocacy in support of affordable housing. And nominations may be submitted to the Housing Office through April 10th, and more information is on the Select Board meeting agenda. The May 4th Annual Town Meeting. Warrant article information may be found on our website, and we want to post, display what that website looks like, the web page, and just point out a few things on it, which we've been pointing out. There's a lot of information on here. On the left, there are project pages for the various big capital projects that are on the warrant. So if people want to know more about those, there they are. We're also working on some videos about those. And we have some public outreach sessions scheduled for some specific articles. With respect to the Somerset sewer extension appropriation request, we have an in-person meeting next Thursday, April 9th at 5 p.m. in this room. That is Article 15. We also have, I'll just skip over the agenda a little bit, just focus on this one. We also have two other sessions for Somerset, Article 15. Tuesday, April 14th at 5, that is remote only. And Tuesday, April 21st at 5, also remote only. And those in the Somerset Needs area might want to tune in to those info sessions. We also have an info session on Article 71, which is a stormwater management bylaw. That is Monday, April 13th at 5 p.m., remote only. The Public Works Director is here, and he's going to give us a brief update on spring road work.
Thank you, Libby. Drew Patno, Director of Public Works. Yeah, we're pretty much full steam ahead on our annual roadworks program for this spring season. Starting on Monday, April 6th, Victor Brandon and their subcontractor Keating will be on island to do roadway milling. That includes a couple sections on Pulpus Road, Cliff Road, a section of York Street, New Lane, and we're looking to add a section of Old South Road east of Nobody Farm that we are waiting on some infrastructure inspections to be completed, and then we'll add that to the program for this spring. So the milling will take the bulk of next week, and then we will transition into overlaying those roads. The micro milling leaves the roads in a condition that's very much passable between milling and paving. Additionally, the Surfside project, which I'm sure everyone is well aware, is well underway. Lover's Lane was fine graded. They were actually supposed to start paving Lover's Lane today with binder course pavement, but there was an issue with the asphalt plant. So that is delayed for at least a week or two. But this spring season, Lover's Lane from Nancy Ann all the way to the Boulevard, and Monahans Road from Airport Road to Evergreen all the way back to Orcoa will also be paved. So those roads will be in much better condition for the summer season. So a lot of paving coming up over the next 9 weeks. And then following that, starting on June 9th, we have our pavement marking and line striping contractor coming out to do long lines, so double yellow center lines and fog lines island wide, including stop bars and crosswalks and other pavement markings. So it'll be certainly a busy, 9 weeks for us leading up to that. Additionally, Victor Brand is working downtown on some sidewalk improvements, especially when the asphalt plant isn't functioning. So they actually, just as of today, completed a section on East Chestnut from South Water Street to Federal, which was also nice. Took out a really treacherous section in front of 3 East Chestnut, the town office building on East Chestnut. We have coming up next will be some sidewalk work on Federal from Oak Street to India alongside the Athenaeum, which really completes those blocks there on Federal that we did last fiscal year. We have a section on Gay Street that we're going to be installing brick sidewalk on, and some other areas obviously filling in when there's not paving going on. Obviously the paving is weather dependent as well, so we'll be back and forth between these activities, certainly keeping Victor busy, and a lot of activities going on pretty consistently. Wanted to address a couple things that came up last week at public comment. I did talk to the sewer director. He's got his on-call contractor addressing some sewer manhole covers, catch basin frame and grates on Sparks Ave, Orange Street, Pleasant Street, and some other areas. And they have some other work down in the Brant Point area that they're focusing on now that we're out of the freeze thaw cycle. So there's going to be a lot of road work coming up. We obviously always appreciate the public's patience. It's always difficult to do this type of work just because it's obviously always impacting folks on our public ways. But there will be a lot going on this spring for sure. So, Brooke,
I'd like to point out something Drew told me yesterday, which was some of the pothole patch was delayed because of a supply chain problem with the patch itself. A pallet of cold patch was lost in transit. So just so the community understands, it's not for lack of wanting to get to the potholes. They just didn't have anything to fill them with. So for a minute, but now they have the supply. So they're playing catch up.
Yeah, a pallet got lost in transit, and then two showed up at the same time. So we're locked and loaded. And yeah, the asphalt plant was originally supposed to be open about 2 weeks ago, and now it's going to be another week or two. So, we're working through those challenges. But I know like I said, over the next 2 months, through all of April and May and into early June, like I said, we're gonna have a lot of work going on. So you're gonna see a lot, both DPW related and our contractors out in the roadways. So, thank you much.
Yeah, can I have a quick question? Is last year you talked about sand on the shoulders and you had a program in place. How is that moving forward still? Have you got some
Yep.
of that or yeah?
Yeah, so that's something we're going to do in-house. It would be a considerable amount of funding to have contractors do that work, but we have identified areas that are highest priority for us, and we're going to be getting on those very shortly here.
Great.
Yep.
Thanks, Drew.
Thank you.
I want to also commend the DPW for its spring post-storm cleanup. Right after the big storm, I think we all know the island was littered with branches, trees, all kinds of debris everywhere. And I said, maybe we should hire someone to help clean this up because it looks like such a huge job. But they have really gotten at it. And I've seen them out in the outskirts of town, all over the island. They've done a really amazing job cleaning up. You can hardly tell there was even a storm. So thank you, DPW. Erica's going to give us an update on the committee, board, commission vacancy and timeline for 2026.
Okay, so we are presenting this a little bit earlier than we normally do. We usually do it about mid-April. So we're getting a good jump on this. April 1st today, I'm just going to review all the list, like this timeline, the list of openings with you. April 8th, that is basically by April 8th, we'll have notified all the incumbents whose terms are expiring. We've got dates set to advertise the committee openings in the newspaper and on the website, and we'll start putting it on the select board's agenda. May 8th at noon is the hard deadline for submitting applications, as hopefully everybody knows now that If you miss the deadline, you go into a second round or third potentially. So this year we've got Agricultural Commission, Airport Commission, Board of Health, Cannabis Advisory Committee, Capital Program Committee, Cemetery Commission, Coastal Resiliency Advisory Committee, Conservation Commission, Contract Review Committee, Council for Human Services, Council on Aging, Cultural Council, Finance Committee, HDC Associate, Nantucket Affordable Housing Trust, Nantucket Historical Commission, Planning Board Alternate, Real Estate Assessment Committee, Scholarship Committee, Sign Advisory Council, Tree Advisory Committee, Zoning Board of Appeals, and ZBA Alternate. We plan to put all the applications before you in your packet on May 13th and May 20th to be in compliance with the committee appointment procedure that we have in place. And then we've got 2 dates for applicants to be able to come before you and review their applications. May 27th and June 3rd. We've noted which committees we're trying to get in front of you, but we've always been pretty lenient. If somebody has a, an issue for one date, we'll allow them to come to the next. And then we're proposing doing your committee appointments on June 10th. And we're trying to do it early this year because when you have your appointments at the very end of June, it doesn't give those new committee members really enough time to get sworn in, to do any kind of open meeting law, conflict of interest training when their terms start on July 1st. So we're just trying to give them a little bit more time. You'll know that the Roads and Right-of-Way Committee is not on the list. That is because pursuant to the select board action, that's going to be disbanded and it is going to be merged into a Transportation and Public Access Advisory Committee, along with the Bicycle and Pedestrian Advisory Committee, and those seats will be appointed by the town manager. The Sign Advisory Committee, a few years ago, the board reenacted or reestablished them as a select board appointed committee. They have all had the same term expiration date. So we agreed that this year we're going to put them in for staggered seats. There'll be 1 seat for 1 year, 2 seats for 2 years, 2 seats for 3 years. And then for the appointments after that, they'll all be 3-year seats. There will be an additional Zoning Board of Appeals vacancy with the resignation of Joe Marklinger, which is on your agenda tonight to be accepted. Town administration is going to be working with the planning and land use services staff on advertising the planning board vacancy due to John Kitchener's apparent resignation as reported today, effective April 5th, once it becomes official. Last I knew, it hadn't actually been submitted to the town. So we will get on that. And I received an email today about planning board alternate seats. There's been a question of the number and the purpose of those. So I emailed town council today to get a definitive response on that. But for now, we're keeping them on. And then because your committee appointment process actually states that your appointments are to be made on your last meeting of June, and a couple of other just minor little things, we plan to bring that process before you at your April 15th meeting with just a little minor amendments just so that we're all in line. And that is it.
Thank you, Erica. There is no select board meeting next Wednesday, April 8th. The next board meeting will be held Wednesday, April 15th, regular board meeting. And that's it for those announcements.
Are there any opening select board announcements or comments? Okay, seeing none. I do have a few updates from previous public comment questions, which I will read. From March 25th, Thomas Barada inquired about road repairs at a variety of locations. The town's response: the Public Works Director will provide an update on spring road work at the Select Board's April 1st, 2026 meeting, which will address the road work part of the inquiry. There are numerous catch basin areas that need repair, maintenance, replacement, condition assessment, and or installation around the island. The planning is ongoing to inventory, develop a scope of work, and repair these. However, due to the volume of stormwater work and the limited staffing currently available, this work does take time and must be prioritized. Inquired about irrigation and whether the town will set up a program where the water department is going to monitor usage on irrigation and shut off high offenders. The town will provide a response to this inquiry at a future meeting. Amy Eldridge inquired whether the town has any special plans to celebrate the 250th anniversary of the United States. The town's response: town will commemorate the 250th anniversary of the Declaration of Independence in a manner that reflects the island's distinct historical context. Traditional 4th of July events will continue as usual. At this time, there are no state-led initiatives that directly include Nantucket and broader Massachusetts 250th anniversary programming. Local cultural organizations and museums will offer smaller independent programs throughout the year. The town remains in communication with regional partners and will share updates as they become available. And then we will move to public comment for this evening for items otherwise not on our agenda for discussion. We do try to keep comments to 3 minutes. And if anyone would like to approach the mic, I also have a hand up online. Amy, go ahead.
Hi, Amy Eldridge. I want to thank Drew for his update, but I had a question about the edges of Milestone Road between Nobodere and New South Road, where there's a lot of heavy truck traffic. It's very crumbly on the edges, and it's really kind of starting to kind of creep out into the roadway. If that might be something that can get looked at too, as there's more truck traffic going behind the airport. Thank you.
Thank you. And Mary Warrow?
Can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead, Mary.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. I wanted to ask a question about Article 73 on the language of Article 73 on the town warrant and on the existing provision of the town code, chapter 67(1)(e). Article 73, as submitted, it appears, by the select board, says that the Article 73 is offered it pursuant to chapter 67(1)(e). Article 73, as I understand it, transfers from the current existing provisions of 67 the authority to enter into a lease agreement for erosion control activities. Under 67(1)(e), this is reserved for a vote at town meeting. 73, which purports to be in accordance with 67(1)(e), transfers that authority directly to the select board. And it gives the select board the authority to enter into an agreement on terms and conditions as the select board deems appropriate. There doesn't appear to be any provision for that to be taken back to town meeting. Not only does that provision exist, but also there's a sentence fragment at the very end of Article 73 that says that the select board may take any other action related thereto. Not clear what that means. The Finance Committee motion tightens up the provision of Article 73, as I assume submitted by the select board, and it says that under Article 73, the select board is specifically authorized to enter into such an agreement for erosion control projects, and doesn't suggest in any way that there is a taking back of the proposal to the board or to the town meeting. My question is,
The 3
I
minutes.
don't see how that is pursuant to chapter 67 1E.
Thank
So
you,
I would
thank
just
you.
very
The
quickly
3 minutes are up.
just wrap up very quickly. I'd like to know what the meaning is or take any action related thereto. I'd like to know under who and what authority was Article 73 drafted? Was it approved as to form and content by town council? And can the select board promptly provide this information? And
Mary, your 3 minutes are up and it's already 45 seconds past.
okay, thank you.
Good evening. Can you hear me? Great. My name's Rick Atherton, and I wanted to follow up on the public comment you just received regarding Article 73. What concerns me about Article 73 is much of what you just heard, but it's not an article written to allow the select board to approve a specific project approved by the Conservation Commission, period. It's a much broader article, because it intends that the permission requirement that goes to town meeting will never be returned to town meeting. It asks that the authority to enter into a license or lease for property below the bluff in below Baxter Road, be given to the select board. And if there's another project in 2 years from now that's totally different from the current project, that will not go back to town meeting, and it'll be available to this select board to approve it, period. If that's your intent, I think you need to communicate that to the voters. If you were to read the town voters guide that's come out for the prior 2 years, not this year yet, it is not at all clear that the article is doing, that the people who read that would know what its intention is. And I think that's a mistake, and I hope you'll move to rectify that. I would be interested in who authorized town council to write the article in the form it's in. I assume it came from the select board or town management. Presumably KP Law didn't just make it up. So thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other further public comments this evening? Okay, seeing none. There's no new business. Approval of minutes, warrants, and pending contracts.
So move.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
That carries unanimously for items 1 through 4. Consent items, Nantucket Wine and Food Festival, Charitable Foundation, Inc., request for approval and execution of Alcoholic Beverages Control Commission, charitable wine license applications for festival events, May 27th through 31st, 2026, which was tabled from March 16th.
Madam Chair, I'm going to recuse on this matter.
Thank you.
Hi, Amy.
Amy Baxter, Licensing Administrator. Just a quick update. As you mentioned, this was delayed pending some further information requested. As you know, this is the charity wine fundraising license that we sign off on every year for the Nantucket Wine and Food Festival for donated wine at licensed venues, Nantucket Hotel, Nantucket Inn, and Nantucket Dreamland. On March the 16th, what was submitted was the requirement that, as we understood from the ABCC, that a minimum of, or at least 51% or majority of funds that are received from wine sales are donated to charity in order to issue further charity partnership licenses of this kind. They required report and proof from these events. We received what was included in the packet, the list of different beneficiaries of these funds, and a total amount of $85,700. Which they indicate to be 55% of those sales. Just a couple things, and then the wine festival is here to answer any questions. They did submit letters and cancel checks and such as was requested for these donations. I believe we received most of them.
that are on this list? Are all of them on this list? I know there was a question Tom Dixon asked last meeting about the 51%, if the town could require more of a percentage. And the recommendation on that is if we did want to consider that in the future, it's something that we would discuss with council and add to our regulations or policies, such, do that process. What I would say on that situation is trying to get into the financial part of it, and also the questions that have come up as to whether we can show that this is 51%. What I would say is I would leave that with the ABCC, that portion of it. They do report to the treasurer for the state, so I think they have folks that are able to do audits. We certainly aren't capable of that in auditing. What I would say is the part of this that the select board really oversees is the charitable donations and the benefit to the community for this event. If we had any concerns of that amount, certainly we can reach out to the ABCC on that, but I would say that I would trust them to confirm that amount. And then also above 51%, I think we like to rather see the funds being spent as they have been doing on proper staffing for these events rather than having volunteers that might lead posts and stuff like that. So I think that's probably sufficient if that answers your question for that. So certainly the board, it's any liquor license is, what is the benefit to the community? So we focus on those charities. It seems that the funds were distributed. It was unfortunate this was as difficult as it was to request. So I would say that in the future, we want to set this as policy that when we review these each year, that these charitable donations, that they request these letters. These organizations should be giving them, not all do, so that they request that so that it helps them. And I think show that they are giving back to the community. So I just want to say that I feel like this didn't need to be as difficult, but here we are. It's set. I think
Yeah,
it's
no,
all there, and that's up to you.
No, I think it's great that, I think it's great that you're getting sort of some of this in line. It's things
Right.
that we didn't all understand or necessarily follow.
Right.
And I think it's important that there is, some understanding of this and some, and will the ABCC share their info? If they do an audit, if they check this, is that something we can, they'll share?
I believe so, and I will directly ask
Yeah.
them that question. We've great working relationship. They're great, everyone there. So, I trust them to do that, and I will ask what that legal question is. So,
Because what we want to do, what I would like to see
Yeah.
is I'd like to make sure that, I'm supporting this tonight. I think the work you've done is great, that we're, getting this sort of straightened out and understood. I think that we want to make sure that, that it's audited and that it's correct, that it's not,
right,
people aren't fudging the numbers,
Right.
What the state does, if someone doesn't give them the numbers, they'll take the total cost of the whole thing, including tickets and everything, and they'll multiply 65% and say that's the cost.
yeah,
So they take 65% of the whole thing. And so I'm not so, I'm guessing from the ticket prices that it's a lot less than that on this, which is fine.
right, right,
I don't have a concern with that, but I do want to make sure, because we don't want to be in a situation with events that become profitable events, even if they're given 5 or 10% or something, or, of their total, or 2% of their total.
right.
If they do it filling the state law, but really we want to make sure if they're having an impact on the island, positive and negative, that we understand it. That's all.
Correct.
And I think that you're doing the right thing. Thank you.
Yeah, it is a not-for-profit, so it is required on that. And I think, again, we've had this discussion for probably 10 years
Yeah.
about seeing the charitable contributions, and I think it helps them to
It-
show that they are. So we'll follow up on that.
Yeah, and and I will say, they've done great. They've done a lot better job than a few years ago, the last few. So I think
Correct.
it's good. We're going in the right direction, and they do a
Yeah.
good job. So.
They are, and I will commend some other departments, especially health. The amount of work that goes into this event, just by its nature, is excessive for 5 days. And considering that a lot of these departments are dealing with, we just had the deadline yesterday for seasonal renewals, and so everyone's getting their inspections, and the health stuff, the details is crazy. So, heads up to them. They've worked really hard on getting this because there's all different chefs, stuff like that. So it's just a lot of work for folks that are already dealing with a lot this time of year. So commend to them for really kind of shaping this up too as well. So I'll leave it up to, and I think they're also on board if you have questions.
Does anyone have any other questions, or do we want to move to a motion?
I'll move approval.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, that carries unanimously, 4-0.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for all the follow-up. Next up, under Citizen Departmental Committee Requests and Reports, we have a resignation acceptance from Joe Marklinger on the Zoning Board of Appeals. I would suggest a
So moved?
acceptance and
With thanks, yes.
thank him for his service.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. That carries unanimously, 5-0. And then we have our Island Home request for a private pay rate increase.
Yeah, can you hear me okay, Madam Chairman?
Hi, Bob.
Yeah, can you hear me all right?
Yes.
Okay, but Madam Chairman, Bob Eisenstein, Administrator at our Island Home. As you recall, about 2 weeks ago, we had talked about the need to increase private rates, and there were two parts to the presentation this evening. One is to show you sort of an equitable schedule that we put together to get to a rate of $800 by the time we move into the new building. And then for the purposes of this evening, we would like to get approval for starting that schedule this year, starting in July 1. And I'll run through the slides and show you what the numbers look like. Next slide, please. So the considerations, just a reminder, there is no regulatory state regulations determining the rates. It's all basically up to each individual nursing home and whatever the market bears. And we put this down just for comparison purposes. Martha's Vineyard, that's just opening their new building, is already charging $650 a day for their new facility. The other considerations, we are a full-service facility. We provide what's called both level 2 and 3, 24/7 nursing care, including CNAs, 5-6 days a week therapy, on-site physicians, and other services as needed. Next slide, please. Just additional considerations. I think you guys are all aware of these. I'll summarize them. Obviously, looking ahead towards the new building, it'll all be all single rooms. Right now, we have two rates, one for semi-private, one for private, because we only have 3 single rooms. The type of facility, we are licensed as a skilled nursing facility, and we set rates in relation to other skilled nursing facilities throughout the Commonwealth. We are required, according to our admission agreement, that's the reason I'm presenting tonight, to give a 60-day notice for any rate changes. So we want to have letters ready to go out to our residents and families by May 1st. And if you will approve, as we get to the next figure, if you approve the rates for July 1, we will send out letters to the INCI probably on April 9th. So we'll have everything in order. Next slide, please. This just tells you what our rates are currently. So we're at 600 and 620, 600 for semi-private, 720 for a private, 620 for a private room, I'm sorry. The average cost per bed in the new facility is expected to range close to $800. So I talked, I think 2 weeks ago when we gave you the pro forma, we wanted to put together a schedule so that we could reach that $800 amount by the time we move in to the new building. To reach this goal, we recommend, it came out to be almost exactly, with a little rounding, a 7% annual increase in rates for the years starting this July 1 through 2028. And then it would go down to a 5.4% increase in 2029, and that will hit almost exactly at $800. The first increase, which I would like approval for this evening, would be starting this July 1. And as I said, we will have letters that will go out talking about the semi-private at $645 and the private rate at $665 respectively. And again, we'll have letters going out to the families, and then there'll be subsequent increases each following year starting on July 1, our fiscal year. Next slide, please. This just shows you how we came to the calculations. You can see in this year, little rounding, 642 is going to go to 645, 663 to 665. But you can see the calculations in 2027, 28, and then it will reach, with these sort of equitable increases year over year, it will reach approximate the $800 amount by 2029, the expected date of moving into the new facility. Next slide, please. This just shows, we put the slide up before. I would say just parenthetically, I think we're going to see rates rising across the board. In many nursing homes, you can see you've got a couple of $600 range there on Sandwich, on the Cape. But again, for the reasons that we've talked about here before, our expenses are much higher, being 30 miles out to sea, so we would expect our rates to be significantly higher. But I do think across the board, in the industry, we're going to see an increase in rates for the same reasons that we're struggling here on Nantucket. Next slide, please. Again, I think just to summarize, we have an agreement in our admission packet, so we follow that. We need a 60-day notice. The content of the notice has to be clearly stated, which we will do, the effective date that it begins, the explanation of why we need the increase, and we will have contact information. We did this last year. We'd had, I don't think we had any questions or concerns from the residents after the letters went out. Next slide, I think it says, are there any questions? Be happy to answer any questions. If not, I would look for an approval of at least this year's rate increase starting July 1. And as I said, we will put out notices accordingly.
Does anyone have any questions?
Yeah, so we're just asking for the 1 year, or were you asking us to approve the escalation?
Well, you could also approve the escalation. I think it depends on, it's kind of a formality whether we need to come back again each year to formally agree for the annual increase. But if you want to approve both, that would be fine.
The agenda's
I
very
defer to your
specific.
judgment on that.
The 1 year.
Okay. Oh, so the agenda's, okay.
It lays out in the agenda item what it is, so it's just for the one.
Okay. So I'm comfortable making a motion to approve the proposed rate change for private pay at our island home.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
That carries unanimously 5-0.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next up, we have public hearings. Public hearing to consider a public assembly permit for the Mariah Mitchell Association Stargazer Circus to be held July 23rd through 26th, 11 a.m. to 8:30 p.m. at Tom Nevers Field, 130 Tom Nevers Road. I'll open the public hearing.
So you've got Shanta and Dina online to review this.
Good evening.
Good evening. Just checking if you all can hear me.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you for having me. I come before you today asking for approval for a public assembly to include a pouring permit and a Sunday license for the inaugural Stargazer Circus. So every year, Mariah Mitchell usually hosts the Stargazer Gala. Last year, we approved the request for the gala to be held at Tom Nevers Field on July 24th with an attendance of 400 attendees. This year, they're moving the structure to a circus from July 23rd to the 26th. The first night, there will be the gala with a performance for those attendees, including catered food service and alcohol service, which is where the pouring permit comes in. And then for the subsequent days, there's going to be 2 performances on the 24th and the 25th, and 1 on the 26th with up to 500. The ask is for up to 500 attendees per show. So they're requesting to occupy the field from July 20th to 27th, which was approved by the Parks and Recreation Commission. This would be for setup and breakdown, and there was also a camping variance approved by the Board of Health. The setup will include a big top tent, which was approved by building for occupancy up to 537 people. Campers that the circus will bring with self-sustaining plumbing, generators for electricity, a smaller tent for vending, porta potties, and septic service provided by Garden Potty. Our recreation from the culture our recommendation, sorry, from the Culture and Tourism Department is to approve the request for the public assembly alongside the pouring permit and the Sunday license conditionally, based on completion of necessary departmental permits as well as inspections by Building, Fire, and Culture and Tourism. Once the field has been set up, those remaining permits that I mentioned are basically just from the health department for food vending. And there was a recommendation on the AIS prior to this that fire wanted to see an evacuation and emergency plan, but that has since been fulfilled since the deadline to submit the packet. So the recreation recommendations from all involved departments are in line with our recommendation to proceed with the approval and the permitting of this event. And I believe I see Joanna in the audience and Amy for any questions, and Lo.
Yes, she's here. Thank you, Dina. Does the board have any questions? Matt?
Yeah, I've got one and I noticed the housing, the temporary housing. Did that happen last year or did they house them?
No.
Yeah, this is new. Okay.
Yeah.
So then the other thing was, is it alcohol one night or is it alcohol all 4 nights? Perfect.
One night.
Got it. Thank you.
Madam Chair.
Yes.
Joanna, I believe that what we approved at the Board of Health, the temporary housing, was basically use of their RVs. Am I correct? Okay.
That is consistent with the carnival used to
Yeah.
bring RVs. This is a public hearing. Is there anyone else who wishes to speak tonight? Seeing none, I'll take a motion to close the public hearing.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
That carries unanimously 5-0. And is there a motion to approve?
Motion to approve with excitement.
Is there a second?
Second.
With excitement.
I was not going to do it because I'm not as excited as she is. but-
Minimal excited.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
That carries unanimously 5-0. Thank you.
If I might, Madam Chair, I love that this is going to be more than just a gala for people who can afford an expensive ticket, that it's going to kind of be a community event. I really, I'm thrilled. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next up, Select Board, Board of Public Works, public hearing to consider amending commercial and residential landfill tipping fees. I'll open the public hearing and turn to Drew.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Drew Padno, DPW Director. So in the packet this evening is the same presentation that we presented 3 weeks ago. So no new updates or changes proposed. Well, obviously, I'm trying tonight by, what's that? Yeah, you can just go right to the proposed fees. There was 2 different fees, 2 different fee pages, Erica, that have this summary. So this is the commercial tipping fee schedule, which included some new fees for the commercial haulers that we discussed kind of in detail last time, and some adjustments based on, improved data and the updated or the new waste service agreement. And Erica, if you go to I don't know if it's the very next slide, might be a couple more. It's the same table, basically in green. There we go. And there's the proposed residential tipping fees, which across the board, we are proposing $0. And that would be, all that waste would actually be covered by the general fund. Chris Lowe's our solid waste manager. He's here this evening. If there's any questions or any discussion that needs to be had. I'll just add, lastly, we really haven't gotten any feedback, positive or negative, since we presented, but anyways, that's all I got. Thanks.
Any questions? This is a public hearing. Is there anyone here wishing to speak on this? Seeing none, I'll take a motion to close the public hearing.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. That carries unanimously 5-0. Is there a motion to approve the fee changes?
Just one comment before we do. The only one thing that I've heard from a couple different people. One thing I did hear was that after hours, some of the leaf waste that's going out to Toscana after hours is helpful to, because it's at a different time. So they don't, you guys are closing earlier. These guys can drop it off at, 5, 6, 7 at night, and they don't have to go across the whole island and through all the traffic every night. So as long, and I know that you know that, and as long as, I want to make sure that we are being cognizant of that and finding a way, if that's happening, and then you're getting one big truck instead of getting 20 landscapers, that's helping all of us. So, so if there's, I don't know how that's gonna go going forward, but I think it's something to think about for the benefit of the island, is cutting down the travel,
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we developed these fees with everything in mind. It was certainly not targeted at any one contract or how they operate. And we've had conversations about that too. But, with that said, Matt, we've also looked at it a little bit differently. That's not to say that, and I very much agree, that is a good service that they provide, which is important to a lot of local businesses. I would just say though that now all that leaf and yard waste is making 2 trips. It's making 1 trip to Toscana via Milestone, Nobody Farm, or Old South, and then a larger truck that's loaded and weighs a lot more is then making the trip to Nantucket. So it might be helping Nantucket and hurting other areas, and that's everything, right? Everything's a trade-off. But I certainly understand that there's a benefit to a lot of folks, and we have the 100-ton per month soft cap, if you will. It doesn't mean that you can't bring us more than 100 tons. The intent was just to improve communications, and we have talked with Toscana. They are very much are very likely to be the only contractor that would approach that limit anyway. So we've talked with their management team, and I'm sure we'll continue to talk to them very regularly going forward. It's a great thing.
And that's the point I was bringing up, is to stay in communication. And I think you'll find, you may find that it's a service not having, 20 other trucks going through going through Nantucket. So I just, I know that you're talking to them, and I just wanted that out in the public.
Yeah,
So,
absolutely.
yeah.
And as I understand it, it's not the fees that are the issue, it's the 100-ton cap. And that was put in place because we have a contract with the operator. And so really what Drew wants to know is, are you going to be bringing, is a load you're bringing on the 30th of the month going to kick us over our limit, right? In terms of the contracts, we have to pay more, or can you wait 2 days? And bring it first of the next month. And so I think that's part of the communication, is both ways.
Yeah, and I would actually just add to that. I think, I mentioned it when we presented a couple of weeks ago, which is, just installing an ability for us to have some control over what comes in and when. And, Chris and I have talked about it. I assume when we review tipping fees, probably, roughly this time next year, and we do it annually going forward, we're going to end up having real serious conversations about the space issues. Right now, I think I mentioned 3 weeks ago, we've taken about 9,500, so almost 10,000 tons of leaf and yard waste a year. That's based on the last couple of years, when Toscana was receiving waste and not bringing it to the solid waste facility. So we do anticipate we might be in the 16 or 17,000 tons a year range going forward. And we do have it's a big site, but it is a finite, area. So we'll need to be mindful of that going forward. So, we're always thinking about the next couple of years and a decade or two down the road, because that's our responsibility. And so, to your point, Matt, the increased communication is going to be really beneficial to everybody going forward.
And if I could just add one aside to the community, that Waste Options is producing an OMRI certified for organic farming product out of this program. And so the more the community takes advantage of low cost, high quality organic compost, the fewer our storage problems are, because then we create a full circle use of these materials. And so just, it's an aside there. So.
Robert Little, I see your hand up, but I've already closed the public hearing, so I actually can't take any more comments on this. But is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
That carries unanimously 5-0.
Thanks, Drew.
Thank you very much.
We don't have any items under the town manager's report tonight, so we'll move to select board reports and comments. request for approval of draft license Wisconsin Beach Preservation Fund, also known as SPPF, for use of town-owned property along Baxter Road, Sconset Bluff for the erosion control project. Good evening, Vince.
Hello. Usual standard opener. Can you guys hear me okay? Because I've been known to whisper up here a little bit. I can just run through the terms of the license super quickly if you find that helpful. This is the kind of abridged version, and I would recommend that everyone actually read it properly, as I know the select board always do. So there's 22 points in this. We started work on this after last town meeting last summer. We worked through the summer with it. We then picked it up again in January and have worked on it with SBPF since then. There's some pretty interesting points in this, and if you want to stop me as I'm going through points, happy to. Yes, please, if you want to put it on screen. Thank you, Erica. All righty. If I go too fast, please feel free to slow me down. So the first point in this is about the responsible use of town property and to strictly adhere to the Conservation Commission and Mass DEP requirements. Point 2, SBPF shall fund all the construction, monitoring and maintenance. Basically, they're financially responsible. Point 3 is how we can have some leverage, pretty substantial leverage, so that the town will hold money from SBPF in escrow. We're going to have two different amounts of money. $2.4 million, $2,437,000 in escrow, so that the town can undertake removal of the geotubes should it be needed. There's a second number in here. So for $6,077,161, so that the town can have sufficient funds to undertake sand nourishment should it be required. Yes, so then there's other requirements, how the escrows get managed, so that there's annual reviews of both the removal cost and the sand nourishment cost, so that we can up or down it as needed. That's CD on the screen right there. E and F. E is about if SBPF removes the project at their sole cost and the town is noticed and SBPF affirms removal, they get their escrow back. That's an indemnity for them. And there's other indemnities in Part F if SBPF fold as an organization. Part 4 relates to the order condition section 54, which requires a removal plan be filed. That is another thing that's already in the order conditions from the Conservation Commission, but is duly locked in here because it relates to the previous part where we need to have a removal plan. So it just is required by the select board as well, should you choose to approve that. Part 5, please, Erica, thank you. It relates to how the activation of the removal plan may happen. If SBPF ceases an organization, the project deemed to be in failure and the right to cure has been exhausted, and SBPF is found to be in breach of the license also without finding a cure. Part 6, SBPF shall file all required reports within 2 weeks before, with the town 2 weeks before they go to the CONCOM or Mass DEP. 7, the term of the license length should be concurrent with the order of conditions. That is 5 years. And there's another option that you can return to the Conservation Commission to continue for another 5 years, essentially. The town may revoke the license terms for a breach and have 90 days notice, and SBPF have 90 days to potentially find a cure. Part 9, any amendments must be agreed by both. Part 10, SBPF shall be financially responsible for any damage to the public road, public utilities within the route that we must identify, that will be identified. This is a plan that must be studied in advance, that they will have to generate to understand the existing condition of the road, so that we can't blame existing potholes or other damage on SBPF. So there, and that will have to get filed to the DPW director. Look forward to it, Drew. 11, SBPF shall be required, shall require all contractors to hold within speed limits. It's obviously the law of the land, but it's now also binding to SBPF. The part 12, SBPF shall provide the town with a copy of the IRS reports so that we can understand how they are financially structured. SBPF shall not apply to activate phase 2 without notifying the town and providing all required documents from the Concom, and then they may proceed to phase 2. 14, this is something that was in the order conditions as well, but needs to be fleshed out further. And then this is an added benefit to the public, where SBPF will construct a stairs on their property potentially, somewhere at or north of 85 Baxter Road that they can identify, and that will be an additional public access down to the beach. Part 15 is the easement, again required to the use of the stairs. 16 is to make sure that there's a closure mechanism so that in case there's unsafe conditions or there's nourishment work going on the geotubes at that point, so that we don't endanger the public. 17 is describes how SBPF can create new amenities on some of their properties in the form of small pocket parks. 18 is a written assessment of the public roads and ways from 41 to 119, in case there's any damage in those areas. 19 is SBPF must work to obtain from all the benefited property owners in the alternative access area all of the rights of access and easements that we need. Secondary to that, towards the end of 19, SBPF shall not be permitted to start any construction or expansion of the project until all SBPF has been provided to the town, and reasonable satisfaction for which approval shall not be unreasonably withheld. Condition to delay an agreement by the property owners affected by the alternative access plan and their obligations set forth in this paragraph. 20, the alternative access plan triggers. So this is if the road fails, and that is a report that would be developed by an engineer of the town manager's choosing, if SBPF dissolve as an entity, and number 3, enforcement orders from the Conservation Commission. So these are other potential triggers, both environmental and otherwise. 21 is one that we is all about the hold harmless, so that the town is not liable. This was one that Matt was quite interested in. And 22 is about support. Once we have a review of approval of an offshore sand source and permitting applications have been done, that the town may support, shall support and provide the best efforts through the application and permitting process for this project. So it's about the next step for offshore sand. So there's a lot in that. Does the board have any questions?
Madam Chair, I have some questions.
Go ahead.
Kind of going back to 3F and inferred elsewhere in here. I mean, the town of Nantucket, I assume, is going to be existing for several hundred years. SPF is not going to be around, are they? Forever?
And that's why we have indemnities in here, that if they fold as an organization, it activates the alternative access plan, and we have the money to, it activates the removal orders that they must apply for and get, and we have the funding in place so that we have the escrow to undertake the removal, and even a year's sand, so we can comply with permits while we plan and hire a firm to do such.
Will we have enough money to remove them? Or I can see, excuse me, a scenario where they no longer exist, we exist, the geotubes are there, we don't have enough money to remove them, and then they stay forever, and we're going to have to fund them forever.
Fair point, and this is something we considered very heavily, and it's baked into this in a couple of different ways. So part 3A1, we're going to have 2.4 million in escrow cash that the town holds that we can then plan to undertake the removal. That was an estimate that was performed by Arcadis that was done last September and re-verified in January to make sure that we have enough. Then second, under Part B, I think it is, and C, they must review those numbers. We must review those numbers annually. And if there's an increase that's needed, then SBPF must top up. If there's actually a decrease, in the unlikely event it happens, but just in case, they will get some money back. But every year we have an annual review. And then third, if they cease as an organization, that activates the removal plan. It's one of the things, bear with me, I think it's one of the ones that the town manager gets to choose the engineer. Hang on a second. Yes, 20. The alternative access plan should be triggered so as well. So if they fold as an organization, we get to remove the geotubes and we get to start the alternative access plan. So it's very heavily considered that if they fold, if they go away, if they do anything wrong, there's essentially basically one outcome where geotubes get removed and we move on to alternative access.
What happens if during the course of the review, they don't increase the escrow fund? Because I'm just assuming it's going to cost more and more as the years go on to remove the tubes.
I imagine it'll be very hard for them the first year where they have to come up with the 2.4 million for the removal costs and another 6 million and change for the sand nourishment costs. So there's going to be $8.3 million the first year. After that, it's just top ups to make sure that there's the sufficient fund in place. Will they manage that? I hope so. And if they don't, there's only one outcome. This goes away.
Could I continue? I have a couple more. And I'm still uncomfortable with that, about the people aren't going to be here forever. And I just want to make sure that some time down the road, the town of Nantucket is not responsible for these tubes, maintaining them, putting sand on them and all of that.
The only responsibility we have is that, say, let's pick the fold as an organization scenario. If they fold as an organization, we're going to activate the alternative access plan. We have enough money to nourish the tubes for, the geotubes in the beach for 1 year while we hire a contractor to do that. So we can even do it in compliance with the order of conditions.
I have two more questions and then
I'll follow up on one of the biggest ones here, Malcolm, is 19, which was is a huge positive that the hold harmless, and they're going to help us get they're going to help us get a bunch of the documents that are needed. Was that 19, was it?
Correct.
Yeah, so that is a huge one. That's going to help us get a lot of the documents that we needed. The scenario that sort of I worry about is, like, we've been trying to thread the needle here for a long time. We've improved this. You know, if we've missed something, this is a public hearing and we can add it. But I think the thing we have to realize is that the state rules haven't, the reality of sea level rise and et cetera, haven't caught up with the state rules, haven't caught up. The insurance companies haven't caught up. The insurance companies want the houses to fall into the water before they pay anything. The state wants the state rules require us to provide the roads. So if something bad happens, the state's going to tell us we have to do it, and we can better them, but we can't better them that much. So what we're trying to find is a way that is that a cooperative manner where they're agreeing to do it, where the state, where we can't lay it on and the state can't make us. So this is, we've looked at this a few different angles, and it's, sort of, so that answers a couple. I know you have other questions.
Well, I'll be brief. I mean, beaches come and go, and cliffs and bluffs, once they go, they're gone forever. So that's why, in some ways, I'd like to find a way to preserve that bluff. I'm still uncomfortable about the long-term effects of what we will ultimately be responsible for. And I have one more question, and I'll let the floor to somebody else. I have to excuse my voice tonight. The Conservation Commission has requested the organization to certain requirements, put on more sand, et cetera. Has that actually happened yet? Are they still out of compliance?
Technically, yes, but this license and the permit that was issued by the Conservation Commission in March of 2025 together are the path to resolving that. So the current volume of missing sand is 105,000 cubic yards, and the order of conditions gives them up to 10 years to resolve that. They can resolve it faster if they want, but it's about 10,500 cubic yards per year in the makeup plan that they are developing for the Conservation Commission. That has been settled for about a year and 2 weeks.
So they really haven't complied. They've sort of agreed to comply, but they haven't complied.
Regrettably, they don't have the license to put sand down at the moment. Then this is the terms of the license to get to that point. So yes, we need to give them a license so that they can put down sand.
I could get a headache, my friend. I'm sorry.
I've lived with it, Malcolm. I got aspirin. Would you like some?
It just doesn't smell. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you for your questions. Just one note, this is actually not a public hearing per se, but I will allow public comments. And Amy, I'll go to you, and then I have a number of hands online that I'm going
Hi,
to go
Amy
to.
Eldridge, resident of 56 Sankaty Road. I'm here because in the past I've spoken to Natural Resources, I've spoken with Vince, I've spoken with the project managers of the GO2 projects. I've talked to the commercial haulers. Sankaty Road and the village of Sconset seems to take an extreme amount of abuse from the weighted 10-wheel dump trucks loaded with the sand. It's all coming through the village, up Main Street, across School Street, West Sankaty, down Coffin. Before we had the town redo the intersection at Coffin and Sankaty, you can see where the 10-wheel dump trucks, when they come to a stop, they have to pivot with a ton of weight in those vehicles. It destroyed one half of the road. In fact, I think in July of a year, Rob McNeil came out and did a chat with the Civic Association in Sconset, and I had him come out after the meeting to see how bad the road has been chewed up. Some of the commercial haulers were actually coming up New Street, down Burnell, and up Clifton, and then on to Sankaty, causing that section of road where they pivot with the weight to get torn up. So they're going even through like the more residential neighborhoods. Is there a way that they can split the traffic via Pulpus and Milestone? I appreciate the speeding clause in the contract, but now that Sankaty Road has been freshly paved and there are no lines yet, they're doing 40 by my house, and my house is right next to where the Pulpus bike path ends. And so I invite any of you guys, when the sand starts coming out, to sit on that lovely bench provided by the DPW and watch the shenanigans of the dump trucks. It's ridiculous. And when I called Natural Resources, Vincent was very, I understand, I'll do what I can for you. I call the haulers. Well, don't talk to us. Call the project manager. Call Josh Posner and Jamie Feely. It's a big circle. Nobody wants to take responsibility, and the quality of life for the residents of the village, it's awful when these things are going by. I was home sick with a migraine. I might as well have gone to work one day because things are rattling off the shelf. Trinkets are falling off shelves. I can hear the dishes in my cabinets rattling because it's a lot of back and forth vibration. And, I'm just curious as to how much destabilization is happening at the bluff when there's that much weight vibrating a very sensitive area that you guys are trying to protect. So I hope that you guys can look at that, and that can be stuff that can be tweaked. But like, if we could split, 3,500 dump trucks. I saw some meme about the amount of sand and the size of the trucks, that there's gonna be 3,500 trucks that could be going up and down that road. That's a lot of abuse for the neighborhood on a very active street. So I appreciate your consideration. Thank you.
I can provide a partial answer.
Yes, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So number 10 in the draft license. SBPF shall be financially responsible for any damage to the public roads and utilities within the route related to the project and associated sand deliveries. It goes on to say SBPF will do it at their own expense. They must go and do a pre-construction report and the DPW director has to review it and provide comments. Then they have to have that report signed off. And then here's my favorite bit at the end. In the event of any damage to the roadways, SBPF shall provide the funding to repair the roadways in accordance with town specifications within 60 days. So they have 60 days to give cash to fund it, and then Drew gets to hire whoever to repair it. I don't know about the bifurcation of the routes, but this at least gives the surety.
Thank you. I have a number of,
Can I just
Brooke,
ask
go
a
ahead,
quick
yeah.
question? Was there any discussion of an escrow for road repair?
Not an escrow for road repair, but they must fund road repair within 60 days.
Okay.
There wasn't an escrow, but
Yeah.
Okay.
No escrow.
It just occurs to me having cash in the bank so that we can do it in case they don't
Mhm.
on all of these things may be worth pursuing. Don't know whether it's, just as an idea.
And another comment on that is if there's a preferred route or a route that's stronger and that's less invasive, that would be something that I would think the DPW director would work with them and they would stick to that route. So I think that there's, and if it's 2 routes, maybe it's 2 routes, but whatever is decided, I think would,
I have a number of hands up online, so I'm going to start going through them. Let's just try to not be repetitive. Robert Little,
And from the prior question, so I have no comment. Thank you very much.
oh, thank you. Sorry, I couldn't go to you last time. Frank Waymar,
Can you hear me now?
yes.
Good. I just want to observe that we happen to be at the forefront of the erosion problem that the island faces much more broadly in the long term with rising sea level. And that in turn has tax consequences for the island, all of the island's taxpayers, in the sense that the current shorefront properties, I should say, are disproportionately higher valued because they are on shorefront, and therefore pay disproportionately higher property taxes because of those valuations. And it's not just Sconset we're talking about, but really island-wide. And obviously some places more vulnerable, shorefronts more vulnerable to erosion than others. But if you take a, 10, 20, 30-year view of the issue, then the entire shorefront of the island is ultimately threatened by virtue of rising sea level. And what gets threatened with that is a disproportionately higher valued properties which pay disproportionately higher taxes to the community. So island-wide, taxpayers are vulnerable to ongoing erosion. Property owners along the shorefront are all ultimately ready to protect their properties. And that in turn, if the island, I should have started by saying we really appreciate the support that we have received from the select board and the Concom. And that makes a lot of sense. That support makes a lot of sense for the island's broader taxpayers, wherever they are, because the shorefront taxpayers disproportionately support the town's tax base. And if they aren't allowed to protect their property, that will gradually go away and, continue to go away over time. So basically all of the island's taxpayers benefit from this effort that the select board has supported. Thank you. That's my comment.
Thank you very much. Next up, I have Burton Balkind.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have a question and a comment. I wonder how many licenses that the select board has engaged with SBBPF in the past. Do you have that information?
Not off the top of my head. Several. I don't have the number.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry, Vincent. I wasn't directing that at you, but well, my point is, I know there's been at least one, and I'm pretty sure that that license was not followed through by SBPF in the past. I just want you guys to put that in the context of whether you're going to approve this draft one. And now, my comment would be on regards to number 22, and I've talked with a number of fishermen who are very involved in the offshore community of the fishing and the benthic community, the bottom, and they have all said that, and this happened in I think 2013. They rallied against any kind of dredging or mining sand offshore, and I would just ask the select board to make sure you get input from the fishing community, because I really feel like this is going to be number 22 is going to be a non-starter for a percentage of the island who uses fishing as part of their way of making a living. I thank you for the time, and I will mute myself.
Thank you very much.
So,
Vince?
through you, Madam Chair, thank you. Meredith Moldenheimer or somebody from SBPF may be better placed to speak on offshore sand dredging, but the current plan that they're working on or pursuing is to not even dredge within state waters, but further out within federal waters. So it would be a substantial distance offshore.
I do have Meredith's hand up online. Meredith, did you want to speak on this?
Thank you so much. Meredith Moldenhauer, representative for the Sconset Beach Preservation Fund. I'd first just like to start by saying thank you so much to Vince and Libby and Matt for taking all of the time, as Vince outlined at the beginning of this discussion, for working with us, and I think coming up with a extremely well-drafted and comprehensive license agreement. I would like to, also acknowledge that, this has been a learning process over the course of the last 12 years. There have been, and I think I've written letters to the select board and to the public when we've said, there have been definitely areas in which we have learned, areas in which we have failed over the time, but we also have obviously learned how to improve and have I think really come to the table in the last few years to work collaboratively with the town. And I think that this license agreement really represents that. It represents a way of addressing and hopefully reassuring the residents of Nantucket that the town will, have, as I've called it, belts and suspenders and even a life preserver for all of those concerns that Malcolm was referencing. I think that, the two escrow agreements, as well as not just having an estimate, but understanding that we will have a plan for removal, and that will be reviewed by the select board to clearly understand the actual methodology and having the approvals for that in place before any construction can begin. In addition to that, working on the road and truck routes, that section specifically says that, we'd have to pre-construction report would also include outlining and mapping out those truck routes. And so whether that includes possibly having, multiple truck routes to divide up the process. I think that will be obviously worked out to make sure that it's the best for everybody. And then assessing those conditions and ensuring that if there is damage, that then is documented and repaired. And in addition to that, we have all of the additional requirements. We also then have, the reference to the offshore sand, and as Vince indicated, that's a process that we will be working collaboratively and openly with the public, the fishermen, and the select board. That's part of the requirement of this NOI that has to get reviewed and approved by the town before we can file that permit application. But that also would be a benefit. Obviously, the town is obviously always in need of sand, and this would be an opportunity for that. And we also see other benefits, as Vince outlined, the benefits of the access down to the beach via a stair. There's benefits in regards to providing pocket parks along Baxter Road for individuals walking along the bluff walk and then walking up to the lighthouse. So we think that obviously this is a comprehensive license, and if you have any questions about SBPF's responsibilities here, I'm available to answer any of them.
Thank you, Meredith. Next up, we have Doug Rose online.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Doug Rose, speaking as a non-voting taxpayer. I had gone through the draft agreement a couple of days ago, came up with a list of largely tactical questions and comments. I have one that I think qualifies as a strategic challenge, and I would put this at the feet of the select board to give some serious thought to, and it has to do with the removal plan. I think there's been a tendency to be very deferential to SBPF in formulating a removal plan. And I know that it's the desire of the select board this time around to make sure that the removal plan is ironclad. And so one comment I'd make about the current state of the draft is that while it establishes an escrow to ensure that removal can be funded, money is not the problem. The reason the geotubes remain on the beach today, despite a standing removal order that's now 4.5 years old, is not money. We have an escrow in the town's accounts that would enable it to fund the removal. The reason that the geotubes have not been removed for as long as they have is because of a loophole that requires that in order to be removed, any endangered structures at the top of the bluff must first move. And unfortunately, Concom doesn't have the purview or the jurisdiction to compel that. So I think this is where the town needs to kind of co-own this removal plan and ensure that whatever is resolved between the town and SBPF is truly ironclad. I'm using one of Matt's favorite words. Right now, as drafted, I don't believe it is ironclad. I think there's a hitch in the removal planning process that I think would call for the town to be more leaning into this. Thank you very much.
I can help with that one too.
Yes, go ahead.
I feel bad. I should have read this word for word from the start in some ways. Number 4, the order conditions, section 54 requires a removal plan to be filed with the Conservation Commission. The Select Board requires that authorization to submit the removal plan be obtained from the board, not to be unreasonably withheld, before being submitted to the Conservation Commission. Important sentence now. SBPF shall be responsible for securing the assent of all impacted property owners of the removal plan. So we were trying to address exactly what Doug is getting at.
Right. The other way to think about that is if and when it's removed, there are probably 1 or 2 houses that are pretty close already. We couldn't, as a board, condemn them as to be moved. The building inspector could, and the Board of Health could. And so, if in fact, this is removed and there's and the engineers are saying it is going to erode more quickly, we'll have no choice but to look at, how quickly and when will those go. And so, and that may be something that has to happen. We can't decree it, but it would be in the removal plan. It would be required at that point. So-
Correct.
Thank you. Emily Molden.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, go ahead.
Great, thank you. Emily Molden speaking on behalf of the Nantucket Land and Water Council. First of all, I want to thank you all for your efforts to negotiate these terms, for taking our comments and the opportunity to discuss the draft license tonight. We do have some concerns and questions that we wanted to raise with you before you do vote to sign the license. I think I have 4 points to make, and I'll try to move through them pretty quickly. First, paragraph 3 requires the creation of the escrow to ensure that the funds remain available if the town needs to undertake removal, or also to provide the adequate mitigation sand for up to a year. Section F of this paragraph then goes on to stipulate that in the event that the town ultimately seeks to retain the geotubes in the future, which would clearly require significant funding to maintain, then the mitigation sand escrow shall still be fully refunded to SBPF. This is puzzling because if the geotubes are not to be removed, but are to be managed and maintained by the town, they would presumably still be benefiting SBPF and their members, and the cost to the town and the community would be significant. So the question is, why would the town agree to surrender this important funding when they would need it the most? So we think that this should be amended to allow the town to retain a single year's worth of mitigation if they should ever choose to take over management of the structure. Second, paragraph 19 seeks to obtain several of the items, as have been discussed, that are important to the success of the alternative access plan. And included in this are the springing easements over properties that'll be impacted. But the springing easements, to the best of my knowledge, were requirements of the town's past MOUs with SBPF, maybe in 2013 and again in 2022, along with the hold harmless agreements. And I understood that these were all to be held in escrow until the Concom approved the expansion project. And the Concom has long since approved the expansion project. So it seems that these should have been released from escrow. So I think the question that we have here is, why is the new license seeking to obtain these easements, which were a past requirement? And so just for clarification, is this a past requirement that has not been met? Paragraph 22 does seem to open a bit of a can of worms, and I think it leaves the public with a lot of questions. What does it mean for the town to be supportive and provide its best efforts in the event of an application for the mining of offshore sand? We don't have any information about where this may take place, what the environmental, financial, or logistical implications might be for the island and the community. So it seems like this matter would be better addressed at a future time when there's more information available. And we would request that this paragraph be stricken entirely before signing the license. And then finally, before considering signing this license, I think it would be really important to get an accounting of all of the requirements and conditions from past legal agreements and MOUs, maybe with assistance from town council, to have a better understanding for the public and the community, to have a better understanding of whether they have been adhered to, and just to be able to provide further transparency around SBPF's accountability for the past agreements with the town before we enter into another. That's all I have. Thank you so much for the time.
Thank you. Vince, did you want to?
I'll try in reverse order. So for number 22, upon review of the approval of the offshore sand and permitting application by the town. That's an important first part of the last sentence. Then it goes on to say the town shall be supportive and provide in best efforts through the application and permitting. So we get an option to review first. That was an important addition. Then
could I do, let
Yes,
me just
thank you.
comment on the sand. The sand, I'm on coastal resiliency. When I read CO2 and some of the other areas around town, the sand needs, especially with natural process that we're going to try to use, the sand needs are astronomical. And so SPPF is, the sand has gone up a ton in value. It's gone up a ton in value for the town too. So unless we find a way to, and this is our, and no one is saying they're going to go out and mine, the fish right off the shore, that it's going to have to go through the state and the DEP and a whole bunch of other ways before we get there. But the goal is to find a way that the town can benefit at cost, and that for sand for then, now and into the future. So this could be potentially a huge benefit for the town. The people are saying it'll never happen, the state won't allow it. Well, we've been saying the state won't allow an outflow pipe from the, at the, for the sewer, for the effluent coming out of, the clean water coming out of the sewer beds. But they're actually, right now, Falmouth is about to have one approved. And so things that were quote unquote not legal and never would happen actually, may actually be possible. And so I wouldn't want to preclude that, because we're going to need it. The town, as a community, we're going to need more sand than we can imagine. And so I just think, I wouldn't want to take it out, because it has so much more benefit everywhere else. And I do agree with Emily, there's a ton of details still to work out. There's a lot that we have to figure out, but I think it's worth trying. So anyway.
Okay, thank you, Matt. With the chair's permission, I'll keep going. Emily mentioned the springing easements, and were past. It was like points 2 and 4, I think she made. The springing easements and the past reviews of previous agreements. That was undertaken by Vicky Marsh and included in number 19. Not to have continuity and continue on from some previous agreements, so that there weren't contradictions. So that hopefully answers the springing easements and the fact that there were previous reviews. Then I'm trying to remember, what was the first one? Was it 3F?
It was about refunding monies if the town takes over the tubes.
Yes, I'm not really sure I understood that question.
Do you have any plans to take over the geotubes anytime soon?
No, thank you.
Okay.
Emily, did you want to clarify that question just to make sure that you got the right answer?
Sure. Thank you so much, Madam Chair. Yeah, the first question, it was in relation to section 3F, and specifically, I think towards the end of that section, it talks about if at some point in the future, the town decided to retain the geotubes to maintain and manage in the future. And if that occurred, the escrow money would still be fully refunded to SBPF. And I guess I'm wondering why the town would return the funding if it's still planning to and needing the funding to maintain the tubes.
So
Yeah, I'll let you answer it. I think I know the answer, but
okay, so I think this was just to provide the select board with an option, not necessarily a requirement.
thank you. I still have more people online, but I wasn't sure if Meredith wanted to address any of those questions.
Thank you so much. Yes, I was just trying to also make sure that there are any questions that we could answer. I think for number 3F that was referenced, yes, I think it was giving the town the option. As in the past, there has been times where there's been a discussion about, well, maybe do we not want to remove the geotubes? I think that is the only requisite there. And obviously if the town chooses not to, then obviously that section would not apply. The springing easements, we are compliant with the MOU. And this, I think, is, as Vince said, a continuation of those obligations now into the formal license agreement. An MOU is obviously not binding. It's a memorandum of understanding versus a license, which is a legally binding final document. And then in regards to the removal of the offshore sand obviously is something in which the town and its residents would be benefiting from SBPF's retention of an extensive list of consultants, experts, civil offshore coastal engineers, surveys conducted into different areas of the waters. And so we believe that this would, while it's review and analysis. There's no commitment by the select board, obviously based on potentially what they review, but we do think that down the road, this would be a benefit to the entire town of Nantucket. As mentioned, as sand is obviously a large commodity that's needed for all coastal engineering projects for the entire island. And happy to address any other questions if Emily had any others directed to SVPF.
Okay, thank you. Guy Wazinski?
Yes, thank you. I appreciate you allowing me to speak today. I'm somewhat new to the process. I have not been on the island as long as others, but I've really tried to get up to speed on this. And one of the things that as I've researched everything, I know that Sconset and SBPF have, out of their own pockets, have spent $18 million getting this project so far. And it seems to me that the geotubes over 12 years have been working. And what I don't understand is I have not read anything about the calculated vandalism that took place over the geotubes. I mean, these were not kids drinking beer. They used jagged knives. They knew where to cut and what transpired. And it just seems like we're moving to the emergency access plan so quickly. And I'd just be curious to hear if there's any feedback about what's going on with this investigation, because justice really needs to be served. Sconset and SBPF have done a great deal for the entire town of Nantucket. Tens of thousands of people go out to that lighthouse, each year, and it's a special place in Nantucket. It's one of the reasons I purchased out in Sconset. And to move off so quickly, and from what I understand at the town meeting, there was going to be a vote to extend the geotubes, and it just seems like we're turning the corner very, very quickly here. And based on what I've read and what could happen, I truly believe that closing Baxter Road would be a huge mess. I mean, there would be no more access to the lighthouse. Dozens of homes would be cut off. Projected numbers of $40 million to put in the emergency access plan. While over the past 12 years, it's documented that these geotubes are working. Can you shed any light on this for me and other people who are actually still learning about the process?
I'm going to turn to Vince for an answer.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm going to have to start by apologising to Guy. We don't comment on active police investigations. We are waiting on a result, and I know many in this room and online are desperately looking for the answer, but we don't comment, regrettably. And I would like to say thank you to Guy. He is a participant, a very vocal and active and willing participant in the Alternative Access Project, and he's been tremendously good to work with, particularly as we have a plan that goes through his backyard. But we do have a plan to restore, to keep access that goes through golf club property. So we would not lose access to the lighthouse. The golf club have been very gracious with their time and their property, and we have gone to great lengths to work very closely with them so that we do have an alternative access plan that has parking for people to use, a walking track that gets people directly to the lighthouse property, so that we can have services in the road for water and sewer, and direct access for the property owners in the area. We do still have a lot to work through on that. We've just gotten the Conservation Commission approval on that, but that's only in regard to the wetlands. We still don't have anything we need in regard to the easements. We still have to work through the full costs. The current estimated cost is $24.1 million, but that estimate is now 2 years old, regrettably, and costs have not exactly stagnated. They have climbed. So that number is expected to regrettably rise. So we have worked quite extensively on this, but we've also done the hand-in-hand approach, where we're not just looking at the alternative access plan that people in the area have been gracious enough to work with us on, but we have also partnered with SPPF and have tried very hard and have worked on a license so that we can have the geotube project on very favorable terms for the town.
Thank you. I hope that answered the questions. Deanne Atherton, and then I'll go to you, Rick.
Thank you, Dawn. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Actually, I think I can turn my video on. Maybe not. Yes. I'm Deanne Atherton. I'm a member of the Board of Directors of the Coastal Conservancy. In regard to the draft before you, we have 3 questions, which I'd like to preface with some historical context. We have reviewed past agreements between the town and SBPF. Based on this review, our understanding is that there have been 6 such agreements between 2013 and 2022. There was the original 2013 Memorandum of Understanding. The 2013 MOU is amended. The 2013 License for the Use of Town-Owned Land. The 2015 Settlement Agreement between the Select Board, CONCOM, and SBPF. The Northern Baxter Road Residence Agreement regarding alternative access, and the 2022 MOU, which was termed a reset by the members of the Select Board at the time to ensure ongoing accountability. Through our review, we have identified a number of provisions with which SBPF did not comply. These compliance failures should inform any future licensing agreement. We will forward a more comprehensive list of failures in writing, but here are just a few examples of provisions in these past agreements with which SBPF clearly did not comply. In the 2013 MOU, SBPF agreed to reinstall the bluff walk for 1,500 linear feet between 75 and 119 Baxter Road. To our knowledge, no action has ever been taken to comply with this provision. In the amendment to that MOU, the town and SBPF agreed to apply as co-applicants for an emergency project to temporarily protect a stretch of Baxter Road. That project was permitted by both the CONCOM and DEP as temporary to give the town time to provide alternative access. However, it is clear from public statements that SBPF never considered the project to be temporary. And so here we are 13 years later, a 947-foot long, 30-foot tall seawall continues to occupy the public beach owned by the inhabitants of Nantucket, not the property owners, essentially abandoned with no mitigation sand, no maintenance, and no monitoring. In the 2013 license agreement, SBPF agreed to comply with all applicable local, state, and federal rules, as well as the permits and conditions issued for the project. Unfortunately, since 2015, SBPF has knowingly refused to provide the requisite amount of mitigation sand required by both the CONCOM and DEP. These and other failures led the CONCOM to issue numerous enforcement orders, culminating in the removal order in 2021 that was upheld by the Superior Court a year later. In the 2015 settlement agreement, SBPF promised on behalf of Baxter Road property owners to voluntarily provide alternative access to Northern Baxter Road, including all necessary easements to obviate the need for takings. As Mr. Murphy reported to the Select Board in December 2025, some property owners still have not provided such agreements. And finally, in the 2022 MOU, SBPF agreed to work with the board to bring the existing geotube project into compliance with the compensatory sand requirements of the original order of conditions. Only after the enforcement issues were resolved and compliance with the existing permit conditions achieved, the town and SBPF would file a joint notice of intent to expand the geotubes. Contrary to this position, the joint NOI was filed in December 2023 without the existing project brought into compliance as promised. Also in the 2022 MOU, SBPF agreed to coordinate with other town boards in the land bank to determine the feasibility of the acquisition, restriction, and management of vacant land on the ocean side of Baxter Road for the purpose of public walking access to the lighthouse along the bluff walk. To our knowledge, no such action was ever taken. With this context, we have 3 questions. First, in addition to Vince and Matt, I guess, who were the other individuals participating in negotiating the draft of the licensing terms?
Rock, paper, scissors, Matt.
You do it.
Okay. So Deanne raises a lot of points. I can come back and address some of the points, but her direct question is who participated. It was myself, the town manager, Libby Gibson, select board member, Matt Fee. We had Tracy MacDonald, the real estate specialist, also participate. We had town council, 2 members from town council. And then from SBPF side, we had Josh Posner, Meredith Moldenhauer, and their attorney, Richard Chip Nyland.
Thank you, Vince. Madam Chair, our second question. Has town council or other town officials reviewed previous legal agreements between the town and SBPF to identify issues of non-compliance?
So we did have town council undertake a review for continuities, and that made part of its way into part 19 of this agreement. The second part about review for non-compliance, I don't have an answer to.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And our last question, please. What is the select board's level of confidence that the terms of another license agreement with the same partner will be fully respected? And what is the basis for that confidence?
I could offer an opinion if it helps.
Yes.
So Deanne has a somewhat valid point and valid questions, but we have worked collaboratively and cooperatively with SBPF over the last number of years. It used to be a case where they would request something, the board, the town would work together, would consider it, and then it would just be an agreement. Then things would go wrong for one reason or another. It happens, that's life. And Deanne raises several questions about 1,500 linear feet of bluff walk, the co-applicants' responsibilities, the 2013 agreement, and then a subsequent 2015 agreement. I can answer questions on all of those and offer some of the pitfalls of working together, and that we have now changed so that we don't just work to get a request and then approve or disapprove. This is now a changed scenario where we work together as co-applicants on projects where the town has a stake and where SBPF are now forgive me, under the sword of Damocles. If anything goes wrong, there's basically only one result. They lose the geotubes and we move the road.
Thank you. Does anyone else want to comment? No. I know Meredith has her hand up. I'll go to her in a second. I mean, I know that this has taken a lot of negotiation and a lot of all of your time for those of you who participated, and I feel like it's been very what has come back is very responsive to conversations that we've had throughout as a collective. Meredith?
Oh, thank you. And I don't know if I could become a panelist to show people my face. I would be appreciative if that's a possibility. But I want to obviously address, Deanne, your comments. One, I was not around in the 2013 license agreement. I have over the course of the last 5 or 6 years worked extensively with Vince and with the town as one of the new leading representatives of SBPF, and I think that we have forged a new perspective and a new collaborative working relationship, as Vince indicated, as co-applicants now, which was never the case previously. I would, also note that, the first time I did get a call from Spruce more recently after the geotubes were vandalized, but obviously we have not engaged with you. We would obviously welcome an opportunity to have a conversation and talk with your group directly, which I don't think has happened in the last few years or months. I would just indicate that I think that the proposal, and looking back at some of the prior licenses, which I have acknowledged, have been learning opportunities at times, is an idea of throwing the baby away with the bathwater. That is the goal here is to work together to solve a problem that the entire island is experiencing, which is sea level rise and erosion, and to find a way that this can be a privately funded project with public restrictions and protections. And I think that, Vince and the representatives on our working group have done an admirable job to ensure that the residents of Nantucket have new assurances that are different and are more purely protected, and also then have specific financial backings behind those. In the past, we did not have formal removal plans. 2 years ago, I worked with our consultants to actually file and prepare removal plans. We went through that process. The town then indicated, that it was not desirable to remove the geotubes because if they did, there was no alternative access plan yet created or contemplated. And so the whole idea here is to work collaboratively together to preserve and protect the area for as long as possible. We don't know how long that can be, so long as it complies. And then if and when it's no longer compliant, pursuant to the conservation order, to have it removed and then to have the alternative road access plan ready and able to go into place. I think this is a perfect model example. While yes, there have been a lot of hurdles and challenges, these are really hard issues. And I think that we have work to resolve those. And so I welcome you to give me a call. I've been on every Conservation Commission hearing for the last 5 years and every select board hearing for the last 5 years. Call me and I'd be happy to have a conversation with you.
Thank you, Meredith. Rick Atherton.
Excuse me. Thank you. My name is Rick Atherton. Just 2 quick comments. You've had a lot tonight. I think we all appreciate the work that has gone into a document like this. I felt somewhat more comfortable that apparently KP Law has worked on the drafting, but I think there's some issues that you may want to share more openly. After the Northern Baxter Road springing easements turned out to be not quite as appropriate as they should have been. You may be all familiar. As I understand, those ran to the individuals, not to the property. And in order to make sure that kind of a mistake, I'll call it, doesn't occur again, I would encourage you to share the terms of the escrow agreement and the terms of the springing easements, the language, with the public so they can be assured those instruments will do what they're supposed to do. Okay. I just think they're an integral part of this process. I would also suggest you might want to put a date or be clear by what point in the process the escrow funds, and I think funds refer to cash, will be deposited with the town. So you don't come along at some point and say, oops, they're not due for another 6 months. Just be clear on that. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Meredith Moldenhauer's hand is up again.
So SBPF has worked with some of the homeowners in regard to the draft springing easement. I know we still need to work with the town on it, but the version that we have drafted does include what would be called a memorandum of recordation. It's similar to in a commercial lease when you record a memorandum of a lease agreement in the land records, which would notify any future homeowner of this agreement and of the springing easement that exists to then be transferred to any future homeowner. So we have contemplated that, and we are trying to dot all the I's and cross all the T's to ensure that those considerations are not just thought of, but documented in the legal documentation.
Thank you. Vince, do you have anything to add?
For number 3, Rick has a point. We might want to put in just at the very start of number 3, prior to construction, the town shall prepare an escrow agreement.
Yes, that amendment makes sense. Okay. Oh, Mary Warrow.
Not sure. Thank you. Can
hear
you? Hello?
Yes, I can hear you, Mary.
Thanks. This has been a very comprehensive review of the last 19 years of issues with respect to the Sconset Bluff erosion control processes and projects. I just want to ask and reinforce the notion that this draft lease is contemplating an order of conditions issued by the Conservation Commission that is not in existence as far as I am aware. It's on appeal to the state DEP, which has required that SBPF provide much more information than has been previously provided before the DEP can issue a superseding order. And it is also the subject of litigation with respect to the local Nantucket requirements with respect to wetlands. And as I believe that there's a hearing scheduled on April 24th regarding the status of that litigation. So we are talking about what I would call castles in the air. There isn't an approved project. It's hard for me to understand why there would be any consideration given by a governing board to this draft. True, this discussion has been very educational and very important, and I appreciate all of those things, but I just want people to be aware of that. Thank you very much.
I beg your pardon. So yes, the Conservation Commission issued their order of conditions after 14 months of hearings and deliberations in just about a year ago, in mid-March 2025, so a year and 2 weeks ago and change. and it was appealed. And I believe, if I remember correctly, Mary Warrow was one of the signatories of the appeal. But this isn't about the appeal. This isn't about the permissions to use the land. This is a license between the town and the select board specifically and SBPF to use land. They're separate and distinct issues.
Thank you. If there's nothing else from the board, let's move on to the sand issue.
Do we need an approval
As
of
part
the
of-
license?
Oh, yeah. Well, do we want to talk about the sand first?
I think
I
we
feel
should-
like
yeah, I
these
think-
things
okay.
tie
We should
together.
talk about the sand and
Yeah, and I feel like we already started talking about the sand, so I just wanted to wrap it all up before we take a vote.
I would say talk about the sand, and there may be a couple of the items. I've seen Vince writing everything down. There may be a couple items that we might want to consider that we may or may not be able to do it tonight, but it would be great. So.
Do you want me to address one or two of the other things that came up?
Yes, please.
So Deanne had some very nice questions and points. Some of them I don't have any answer to, just bluntly. The 1,500 feet of linear foot of extension of bluff walk, don't know anything about that. I've only been working on this project about 5-6 years, so about 6 years. So I don't have an answer to that one. Sorry. Yes, in 2013, it was initially considered a pilot project, yes, and people like to continue to call it a pilot project. If I remember rightly, there was a follow-up order of conditions that expanded the length of the geotubes and put end returns on it. I think that was 2015 or thereabouts, and that changed it from a pilot project to a fully permitted project. So there is a distinction there. So Deanne does have a point. It started as a pilot project, but its purpose did change. And that was another point. The 2018 access agreement, yes, that was drafted. It was designed, but it had flaws. We keep discovering old flaws all of the time, and we're learning from them. We pick every mistake and we include it in our next fix. And the 2018 access agreement was access only. It didn't contemplate water, and it didn't contemplate sewer. It only got people to the very north of Baxter Road and to the lighthouse, and nothing else. It was good for what it was. It also took a long time. It took 3 or 4 years to get that agreement. That was a hard-fought agreement in its own right, and that was done by SBPF, if I remember rightly, on their own merit, with only some assistance from the town. And I think they engaged their own engineer to even get the designs. But we live and learn. The 2018 MOU agreement that Deanne mentioned, and a path to compliance. So that was another good one, to bringing the geotubes back into compliance. It was in there, and they did have an NOI that they submitted on their own. It ended up being a difficult one. And the 2022 MOU agreement is where the foundation of the partnership is. Practically 4 years ago, it was March of 2022. So this partnership has gone through a couple of evolutions of coming to understand what we need in order to get to the compliance with sand. And that sand compliance was worked into the order of conditions in order to get the notice of intent approved at Concom this time last year. And that is where the full volume of missing sand was fully calculated, and a path set out so that we can get to rectify that 105,000 missing cubic yards of sand. And again, we do need a license and a permit to get it on the beach.
Thank you. Mary Warrow? Oh, maybe it was just still up. I mean, the sand was a request.
My understanding is
discussion?
that Spruce was going to start this, unless there's
You
an
mean
intro.
the next agenda item?
Yeah, I was
Yep.
trying to,
That should be introduced by those who asked for it, I think. Deanne and Spruce.
I see you both on camera. Who would like to address this, Deanne?
Spruce has comments, and Erica, you will project the graphics. I think he's going to address each of those. Spruce, right?
Yes, we have a couple of slides.
While waiting for the slide to go up, my name is Burton Balkine. You've heard my nickname Spruce used. I'm president of the Nantucket Coastal Conservancy. I want to thank you for this time. This is an important part of the equation of the expansion of the geotubes that hasn't been addressed by the Conservation Commission because it's outside of their purview. While I'm going to make this short, I want you to keep in mind Amy Eldridge's comments earlier about living in Sconset, and how it affected her, and just keep those in mind as I'm making this presentation. So this first slide, let's see if I see. Yep, this is it. The first slide is intended to people understand the magnitude of the requirement. As permitted, the project will require over 300,000 tons of sand, and this will take about 100 barges over the period of, I think, 5 years, which also means 14,000 round trip truckloads to be transported from Steamboat Wharf to Baxter Road. Eric, do you mind putting up the second slide now? Thank you. In this slide, we're seeing the truck route, and that it shows SBPF's consultants plan this route from Steamboat Wharf through the Milestone Road and then through Sconset side streets and the dump on Baxter Road. The construction plans calls for 6,000 round trip truckloads. This will take place in a 4-month period, 80 straight work days. That's 75 deliveries to Sconset every day, 75 return trips to the harbor every day. That's 15 trucks per hour, one every 4 minutes. 10 hours a day, 7 a.m. to 5 p.m. Their construction plan would schedule these 6,000 round trip deliveries in the off season, which might be great for the Baxter Road residents and the Sconset residents, but for the year-round residents along the route, like Amy Eldridge, I feel like it's going to have a disproportionate amount of adverse impact, and that again wasn't taken into consideration during the Conservation Commission. So this is asking the Select Board to take this under consideration, because as being a partner with SBPF, you're going to own this to a certain extent, and so I want this for the public to understand how much of an impact this will have. And then I guess I can leave it at that. I had a few more talking points, but I think you guys get the gist of what I'm saying. Thank you very much for the slides and letting me present this.
Thank you. Deanne?
Yes, thank you, Dawn. Do I put my video on? Erica, I'm not sure. Oh, good. Okay. Sort of one other point we'd like to make is that the sand requirement in our current calculation, the 312,000 tons, is actually quite conservative and could go much higher. Here are the 3 reasons why the sand requirement for the expanded project could be higher. 1, if DEP rejects adaptive mitigation and insists on the 22 cubic yards per linear foot per year requirement of the original permit. 2, if DEP rejects SBPF's practice of stockpiling most of the mitigation sand on top of the sand template 30 feet above the beach. And 3, if DEP rejects the Concom's 10-year allowance for curing the sand deficit accrued under the original permit for the current geotubes. If any or all of these happen, the annual sand volumes will go up significantly, which means that the harmful impacts on the community at large will also increase. as Spruce said, this was a matter that was outside the purview of the Conservation Commission. It was not considered during permitting, but it's something that, you know, to be frank, you will own. And whether you split it between Milestone Road and Pulpus, at least doesn't seem, in my view, that it lessens the impact. This is something we didn't know 13 years ago, but we know it now. And we think it's important to recognize it and understand what we would be foisting on the community at large.
Oh, I think she might have frozen. Okay. Vince, did you want to say something? I do have some other hands up.
Yes, please. So I had a look at some of these numbers. I had time to go over it. I just want to say up front, I work for the town. I'm the neutral party here. I'm not trying to pick apart other people's work. I don't mean this to come across poorly or negatively. I'm just trying to understand numbers. So I had a look at it. We don't know how the Mass DEP is going to go. So it's quite speculative to imagine that they might increase sand requirements or try to ask for something like that. It's not impossible, but I would call it unlikely, very unlikely. And I'm not just looking at things I've seen in the past. It's kind of just a little bit of experience from my part, but still not impossible. Mass DEP do come out with some zingers every once in a while, but it's not the norm, is what I'm trying to say. So I did look at the numbers, and I did have a look at some of the ideas of how much sand might come and go. I found that a little bit speculative as well, but it's not beyond the bounds of possibility either. So basic fact is, yes, a lot of sand will be needed. That is obvious to anyone. So I did use Deanne and Spruce's numbers to try and understand what 6,000 truckloads in the first year and 14,000 truckloads overall might look like, and the 75 trips there and back again, which is 150 truck trips a day under their calculations. That might be a little off, but let's run with it just for the sake of a thought experiment. So I had a bit of a chat with Mike Burns earlier today, the transportation manager. He pointed me to a resource on the town website, and he pointed me to where there is a average daily traffic volume calculator. There's several stations around the island. There's two on Milestone Road. There's one on Nantucket Road, there's some at Cliff Road. They're all around the place. You can look them up, you can set ranges, you can move little toggles around and get what you need. So what I did was I looked at traffic volumes for last year as a comparison, the most recent data we have. And I went from August of 2025 up to February of 2026, like just the month just gone before now. But the March data is not available yet. Kind of doesn't matter, because we're talking about, say, a 4-month construction window here that would start in October and potentially run through January. So that's kind of what I focused on. But just to get some basic ideas on the kind of numbers that we're looking at for traffic volume. So they're saying 6,000 truck trips in the first year. Let's just go with that. What does that mean in terms of the traffic volume that's experienced on the start of Milestone Road, where the sensor is, just kind of across from Hayes Park, between Hayes Park and the water company, like before the turn off for Monomoy. So you just come on to Milestone Road, you've just come off the rotary, and that's just about where it is. So in August, in a normal year, last August, in August 2025, there were 16,101 vehicle trips. That's both directions, all vehicles. And September, less, 12,866. So basically what you can say is for August and September, it's the truck trips would be the equivalent of about a third of a day in August, half a day in September, or in February, there's about 6,574 just gone, this February just gone. So it's the equivalent of a day in February, but spread over 4 months. So I wanted to get a grasp of that for percentages, because The numbers are abstract, but percentages aren't. They're easier to understand. So for the 4 months, October, November, December, and January, wouldn't you be reasonably expecting the increased construction traffic in the operation window that they're looking at? You're looking at 340,000 trips in the month of October, 268,000 trips in November, 244,000 trips in December, and in January, 217,000 trips. Add it all up, and you're at about 1.07 million trips in 4 months. And then to put that in context, 6,000 trips out of 1 million is 0.56%. It's just a little over 0.5%. Be generous, call it 0.6% of the traffic in those 4 months would be just those trucks. So it's very small. And if you then convert that to the idea that that might be an increase, it's an increase of about 0.6% of the traffic volume. It's not noticeable. You don't really notice much of a change until you get to plus 5%. So I'm just trying to put it in context. The numbers are huge and abstract. And I'm going to start where finish where I started. I'm not trying to pick apart their work too hard, but I'm just saying there are so many vehicle trips. It's very small. It's like 16,000 truck trips in August. Sorry, vehicle trips, I beg your pardon. 16,000 vehicle trips in August. And we're adding 6,000 over 4 months. It becomes very dilute, very, very dilute, and may not be noticeable.
Yeah, I look at it, I think of it a little bit differently. I think it is a big impact. But I do believe it's partly why I think that the offshore sand, a different sand source is so important. I think that's, and I know that some people have mentioned that we shouldn't be doing that or thinking about that, but I think I think that is the key to getting these trucks off the road, to not having to bring them over on barges and everything else. If we can find a better way to do this for them and for all the other sand the town needs, that is, and as we've learned through all of this, these things don't happen in a month or a year or 2 years. It takes 3, 4, 5 years to get through some of the red tape that has to be gotten through. We could start on we've got to get started on the sand now, so that we having a source of sand that's affordable for the town as well, before we lose, we start losing areas of CO2. And so, and that's in the coastal resiliency plan. It talks about how much sand we need to put on there. And so I just think there's things like that we haven't had a chance to really dig into as a community. The other thing I think that just on this whole topic is, because the town actually owns physical land there, not just sort of fishing, fouling, navigation in the intertidal zone. We actually own the property. That puts more responsibility to town, but it also enables us to have more control. There's a lot of stuff, a lot of projects going on the North Shore and other areas that are not, that we don't really hear about. They're not in here every week. It's, it goes to COMCOM and it happens. And some of those are, I've walked my dogs there. Some of those, they might be core, but they're the new kind of core. They're pretty hard, and they're pretty solid structures that we don't hear about. And so this is happening across the entire island as it is. And those have sand on them, and the sand's gone. The sand goes back sort of in the fall. And so I think that that doesn't mean I'm saying that whatever anyone wants to do in Wisconsin, it's okay, et cetera. But I do think people have to realize the town is as involved with this as they are, because we can protect the town and because we have to be. So it's just interesting.
Thank you, Mel. Chris Powicki. I think Erica needs.
Hi, can you hear or see
Yes.
me?
We can't see you, but we can hear you.
I'll work on the seeing part in
No,
a second.
you won't be able to. Unless...
Okay, gotcha. Hi, Good evening. I'm Chris Powicki, Chair of Sierra Club's Cape Cod and Islands Group, and I appreciate the opportunity to speak tonight as a non-resident. Sierra Club is concerned about both accelerated mining of and growing demand for sand for beach replenishment, coastal armoring, and climate resilience projects benefiting private property owners but impacting others. To that end, we've been following the Sconset Geotube project for about a decade. I live in Brewster on the Cape, where a sand pit site at the top of our sole source aquifer lens has rapidly expanded over the past 15 years while degrading public interests. Clear-cutting and mining have eliminated forests and removed more than 100 feet of underlying sand across a couple dozen acres, compromising our natural treatment and filtration system and leaving portions of the aquifer exposed after heavy rains. The good news is that our industrial sand mine is just about played out. For those needing sand here and across the Cape and Islands, the bad news is that the region's remaining land-based extraction sites are in the same situation. That's likely why SBSF sourced 3,300 tons of sand from Plymouth in early 2024, trucked them to New Bedford, and barged them to and trucked them across the island. As just documented by Nantucket Coastal Conservancy, sourcing sand from away does not eliminate impacts to Nantucket residents. For folks in Plymouth, Carver, and other southeastern Massachusetts communities, the adverse impacts of sand extraction are continuous and growing due to increasing demand, rising prices, and inadequate local and state regulations. Clear cutting and mining are rampant, eliminating habitat, filtration, and other ecosystem services, and stripping away protections for their sole source aquifer, as described for Brewster, but at far greater scale. Dozens of extraction sites exist, many surrounded by state-designated environmental justice communities. Agricultural exemptions and site preparation allowances for other types of development are being abused to support sand profiteering. Endangered pine barrens and wetlands are being compromised and destroyed, as are Native American archaeological sites. Neighbors of extraction sites are exposed to noise, vibration, toxic silica dust, and truck traffic, and pollution. Their misery is real. While SBSF and the town are far from the only entities seeking sand from southeastern Massachusetts for coastal uses, Sierra Club believes that all Nantucket stakeholders should be aware of the externalized impacts experienced by other residents and communities within our shared Commonwealth. Sierra Club has asked Senator Sear, Representative Moakley, and Senator Fernandez to secure funding for a comprehensive study of the pros and cons of sand extraction and use, as well as coastal armoring, in order to create a modernized regulatory framework that better balances the protection of environmental resources and private interests. Sierra Club opposes offshore sand mining. Thank you for your attention to our concerns.
Thank you. Meredith?
Hi, good evening again. Meredith, representative from SBPF, the Sconset Beach Preservation Fund. Just a couple of comments. Obviously, over the course of the last 12 years, we have been, bringing trucks in and delivering the sand. I don't think that in the past you've had as many specific protections as are currently outlined in the license agreement for those truck trips and the collaborative and co-application mentality that we've outlined today. So I think that will address those issues in the future. And we obviously look forward to engaging with the community, residents, individuals that live on that route as we work through that process down the road. This is as we've all said, a very long and complicated process. As Vincent indicated earlier, people might need some Advil, but we intend to continue to work with the community and with the residents throughout that process, and look forward to engaging with everybody on the truck trips as we move forward. I appreciate Vince's analysis on the number of trucks in comparison to the overall load capacity of the existing Milestone Road and the current, and kind of comparing that to the minor amount of overall impact from the current load capacity. But we, as SPPF, are committed to engaging with those impacted and wanting to discuss with them how we can improve that relationship and those experiences, so that way it is reduced and not as large of an impact. Second, in regards to questions about offshore sand, it seems confusing. There's a conversation about not wanting the trucks, but then also not wanting the offshore sand. The conversation tonight seems a little conflated in that regard. But I do think that obviously we will work collaboratively with the town for the offshore sand. There were comments made about both the truck trips and the offshore sand being for the sole benefit of property owners. And I want to just simply correct the record there and talk to the select board and the community about that and elaborate on 2 points. One, there are many areas that would be protected by the expanded project that have no homes. And so the only benefit for the project that would be paid for by private citizens would be the road. That road then provides access to the lighthouse. It provides access for people to then benefit from what we are providing as a new staircase down to the public beach. We've also talked about those areas that have no home that be protected by the future geotube, that also would have seating and opportunities for public recreation and benefit. So I think that, there were comments made that this is only for, private use. I don't think that that is in fact the case. And I think that the town has done an amazing job of ensuring here that there is public benefits to the overall Sconset and Nantucket community overall for the project. So I hope that addresses some questions. If there are other questions regarding the truck trips or the offshore sand, I'm happy to answer them.
Thank you very much. Deanne?
Thank you, Dawn. We really appreciate having this discussion, and you're agreeing to our request to put the issue on an agenda because we weren't certain that you were aware of these impacts. And we're also uncertain whether the community at large is aware of these impacts. Just to remind everyone, we are all volunteers. We have no financial interest in this project. The only reason we're really engaged is that the beach below the bluff is a private beach. And the document, this has not been mentioned in this discussion, but the documentation of the geotubes has clearly proven that the geotubes are harming the beach, which is narrowing and which will eventually disappear. And I think in the large context of things, we shouldn't forget that. In previous iterations, we talked about the science indicating that. Now we know the data indicates that. And we believe that's why DEP is giving this such a close look. So in closing, again, we thank you. We do our best with our numbers. We strive for accuracy. And if we are in error in anything, we stand to be corrected. We want to just focus on the facts. So again, we appreciate it.
Thank you. I think Vince did use the numbers provided, but put it into a context. And of course, we don't know of those vehicle trips, how many are heavy trucks and how many are regular cars. But I think we are done with this for this evening. Do we want to go back to voting on the license agreement so that this can move forward to town meeting?
Yeah, question
with
after
the date.
after the things we've heard tonight, is there anything else that anyone thinks should be added? Or is there anything, is the license as is agreeable to everyone? That's my first kind of
We
question.
were going to add a date under which section was it?
The amendment, sorry, Vince Murphy again. Sorry, the amendment I offered was at the start of number 3, not a date, but prior to construction, the town of Nantucket shall prepare an escrow. So that was to incorporate Rick's suggestion. It's so that we have the certainty, but it replaces a date with an action required before a follow-on action.
Yeah, that makes sense.
I did have one other thought. Brooke had an interesting idea for number 10 about an escrow for the
For road repair.
correct. So I've been thinking about that one a small bit. So in here it says that SBPF shall provide the funding to repair the roadway in accordance with the town specifications within 60 days. If I have to go off and prepare an escrow, we need to know what the potential impact is. The study hasn't been done yet to understand that. It's not impossible to get done, but we'd have to do a lot of unusual estimating. I don't know how to go about that just now. It's something I can put more research into, but the fact that there's another way of saying it, that we just bill them effectively and they have to pay within 60 days.
Oh, here's a possibly another way to think about it is consider an escrow after the first year. Like we could put some wording in there that,
so that we understand what 1 year might
like,
cost.
and maybe rather than trying to, draw it up and guess and everything else, maybe it's, maybe we make an amendment that an escrow be considered after the first year, because the DPW, we'd have to write it in legalese, but
How about we do this? Should SBPF not pay make the payments within 60 days, we would then subsequently require an escrow.
there you go.
Yeah.
So my worry is they can't come up with the money to reimburse the town for the roadway improvements. How do we make sure we're not on the hook for that, right? So, I mean, maybe it's one shot and then we will then require an escrow after that or something like that.
Meredith has her hand up, so maybe she can respond to that.
Coming up with the fly here, trying to come up with ideas. I think we would also potentially be willing to indicate that we already have 2 escrows for 2 million for 400,000 and one for 6 million. That we would potentially allow, if we don't come up with those funds in the period of time, that would then allow you to pull the money from one of those escrows, that it would have to be written into the escrow agreement. And then we would have to, obviously, as Vince indicated earlier, true up that escrow in connection with anything else. Obviously, we are committing to do this work, but we understand the town wants to have, protections in place with funds available. So that might be another way to kind of have the cash in hand.
Are you comfortable with that, Vince? Matt?
I need to think about that one a small bit. It does need some legal review, but if I understood Meredith's suggestion correctly about taking money from one of the other 2 escrows, if those funds aren't in place and another issue happens or arises, then there will be insufficient funds for the town to be covered for either the full removal cost as directed by our consulting firm, or the full volume of sand, so that we then would not meet the conditions of our permit. So if I might, I very much enjoyed Brooke's suggestion about an escrow if they don't pay within 60 days.
If they don't pay within.
And I would also like to take that time to do the correct study to find out what the escrow volume calculation should be, because that's something I don't know how to, I'd have to seek outside advice on.
Okay. Meredith?
We would be agreeable to that. We were just trying to save the town the additional process of having to find out the cost of that in advance and kind of saying, hey, you have those funds available. But if that's the way the town feels is the most appropriate way to deal with it, we would be fine with dealing with that and accepting those terms.
Okay.
How about we just say after year 1, we establish an escrow for whatever the repairs, the cost of the repairs in year 1. So we have actual numbers. Does that make sense?
That works for me.
Okay.
Okay. How do we determine what damage is from the trucks and what's normal damage?
Yep. So, beg pardon, 1 second now, Malcolm. Number 10, SBPF shall be financially responsible for any damage to the public roads and public utilities within the route related to the project and associated sand deliveries. And then they must do a pre-construction report. They have to get Drew our DPW director to review it and sign off on it effectively. And then any damage that occurs after that, that can be definitely related to truck routes. Amy kind of described it quite well at an intersection where, you know, they're constantly making the same left turn or something, then it's a bit more definite. Then they pay and we bill them within 60 days and apparently establish an escrow after a year.
Could I have one more? Sorry to go back in the past. You talk about a year ago or so, we were having some debate about what was phase one and what was going to happen. Has that been resolved?
Yes.
To your satisfaction?
Phase one, and in very much particularly reach one going first, and that has been definitely solved to my satisfaction. In fact, the board voted unanimously that reach one should go first, and that's been long accepted even by the Conservation Commission. Thank you.
And here's a question you can't answer, but what is the probability, in your view, that we'll ever get sand adequate for this project?
In my view, SBPF are required to, and if they have to buy it and have it under contract, which is one of the things in the CONCOM, and then it's there in number one, take responsibility for looking after town projects, and I think is it number 6? SBPF, no, it's not number 6. I don't remember which number it is, but the town SBPF are fully liable. And by the way, sorry, for all costs. And then in number 8, don't forget that the select board always retains the right to revoke.
Meredith, did you? I saw you just took your hand down.
No.
Oh, sorry. I was just wanting to indicate for Malcolm that in regards to the sand, you know, we also have to have a contract for the sand requirement pursuant to the Conservation Commission order, in addition to all of the requirements in the license agreement, and that we also will be. Sorry, I forgot the second question. I think it was a question about. Sorry, Malcolm, what was the second question you asked?
Sourcing.
It was a philosophical question.
Yeah, it was about whether there will ever be enough sand.
You don't know the answer.
Well, I think at the end of the day, I mean, like, you know, we worked with a lot of contractors, and we obviously, you know, there is access to sand. And obviously our goal is to also, you know, coordinate with the town to address the sand, you know, through offshore sand, and to find an appropriate source for the town and for us.
Madam Chair, would it be possible to just have this license for a certain period of time, say 1 year, to come back to the board every year? He talked about revoking it, but this way we could get a chance to see if everyone's promises have been fulfilled.
So number 7, the term of the term length of the license is to be concurrent with the term of the final order of conditions for the structure. That's what the CONCOM said, and they gave an initial term of 5 years with an option to go back for another 5 years. So effectively, it would be a max of 10 would apply to this, but only under the rules of the CONCOM.
But I think Malcolm, what Malcolm is suggesting though, is that it can probably do both. It can run with the CONCOM, but we could commit to a year, you know, or maybe we should commit through the document to a yearly update.
Exactly.
That's the privilege of the board.
Madam Chair, I've been struggling with this all night. And I think what would satisfy me is that in a year from now, we'd have this discussion again. I can only support this license if it has a year. If it's only good for a year, regardless of the CONCOM.
If I might, and through the Madam Chair, I only negotiated these terms. You're the ones that have to agree with them and live with them, and I will then enforce whatever your terms are. So it's the privilege of the select board. If you want to go for a different number, that's up to you. I have done what I can.
I understand. Vince, you've done a magnificent job, an almost impossible job, but to me, there's just too many unknowns, too many questions, too many promises, too many people with philosophy, with ideas, numbers that may be too big, too small. I think we should limit this to a year. And who's ever here next year can have this debate again.
Thank you so much for that parting gift.
I could suggest an option.
I was going to say we should have a yearly review.
Review is more, yeah.
Meredith?
Yes, and I think the agreement already takes into account coming back to the select board on a regular basis. I know you guys love to see us, right? You want to see us more. But it does. It includes us coming back to you before every filing, before the Conservation Commission, before we go to phase 2, as we work collaboratively on the offshore sand. But to have a singular, a 1-year license overall, you're asking for $8.4 million in escrow. We're talking about a multi-million-dollar construction project. We're also talking about protecting the town from the alternative road access and getting all of those requirements teed up. At the end of the day, if you were to buy a home, you're going to buy a home, you're going to build infrastructure, you're going to require more long-term protection for that. And I think that's a reasonable request. The time frame that we're asking for here is reasonable in regards to what the Conservation Commission's order is. But again, we are very happy to come back, as is already prefaced and required by the agreement, for all these additional reviews.
Yeah, I think that we should just note that we will have a yearly review for compliance.
Yeah.
But if they're out of compliance, what happens after that year? Do we say, oh, you're out of compliance, and everyone says, well, we'll try to do better? And
If
I mean,
Well, there's a
yeah, we
Go
could add a sentence at the end of number 7 to have annual review, where the select board reviews compliance and continuation. It doesn't mean that they don't have the full license term that runs concurrent with the Concom. It means that you could then review it and then potentially invoke number 7 annually.
and
Does that-
I'm
are you
s-
comfortable with that?
Number 7 is what can we do at 7?
Sorry, number 7 is would end up including annual review. I misspoke. No, then you could invoke number 8, which is invoke number 8, which is to revoke. Tough.
So if I'm here, if I'm hearing you correct, in section 7, it will read the term length of this license is to be concurrent with the term of the final order of conditions for the structure of 5 years, including amendments, extensions, and continuing conditions associated with the certificate of compliance. There will be an annual compliance review before the select board.
We'll add that sentence.
And then if they're not compliant, we have in section 8, the authority to revoke.
And just to be clear, it's only in terms of the license, not the Concom. It's your review
Right.
of their license to use the land. That's the review.
However, without a license,
Exactly.
they go to removal, right? Because they no longer have permission to have the structures.
And then that activates part 3.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
I think we might want to bring this back to the board at your meeting on April 15th, just for final look at the language. We can add what we just talked about. And I think we want to review a little more carefully with town council, this road repair escrow idea.
Yeah.
I really don't want to have arguments with people over who did what damage. And in that way, it would be a lot easier. I'm sorry about this, but to have an additional escrow that we don't have to depend on, that was my damage, that wasn't my damage, that sort of thing. So why don't we talk a little internally about that and bring it to you on the 15th?
Madam Chair, I'd support putting off a vote.
Okay, so is that a motion?
I move that we continue this discussion to our next meeting on the 15th.
Is there a second?
I will second that.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
That carries unanimously. Vince, I'm assuming you'll be speaking to Meredith and town council and so forth to finalize everything we talked about tonight. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Vince.
Okay, next up, we have an open meeting law complaint filed against the select board by Megan Perry Glowacki dated March 20th, 2026. Acknowledge receipt of the complaint, review and discuss a response, And we do have town council on, and there is some stuff in our packet about a response to this complaint.
Good evening, Madam Chair, members of the board. I'm happy to provide an overview to the board this evening of the contents of the open meeting law complaint. A draft response has also been provided to the board, subject to any review or changes the board may have this evening. Would the board like an overview of the complaint?
Do you all want an overview of the complaint? Sure.
Okay, just very
A
briefly.
quick one.
Sure, thank you. A very brief overview. As you all know, this relates to a March 19th meeting of the Board of Health regarding the turf field project. An open meeting law complaint was filed against the select board. That's in addition to other open meeting law complaints that are being handled separately through the Board of Health. Essentially, in this complaint, there's an argument or an allegation that there was deliberation by members of the select board. Town council has reviewed that complaint and has provided a draft response to members of the board in advance of the evening, and it's in your board packet. Essentially, based on a review of the open meeting law determinations from the Attorney General's Division of Open Government, as well as the factual circumstances that were present at the March 19th Board of Health meeting, a response has been provided indicating that the conduct of the two board members and Mr. Dixon didn't constitute deliberation outside of the open meeting law. Properly posted meeting under the open meeting law at the board's meeting. And in addition, that there was no prior deliberation by the board relative to the proceedings of the Board of Health on March 19th. I'm certainly happy to answer any specific questions that any members of the board have this evening, but a draft response has been provided for review and confirmation of the facts. If it is agreeable or if there aren't any changes, town council can certainly finalize that draft response and file it with the complainant in this case, as well as the Attorney General's Division of Open Government. And I'm happy to answer any questions the board may have. Thank you.
Matt?
I have one question. Was town council provided to to Ms. Smith, to that, for their complaints as well? Because I don't find, yeah, good, all right. Because they were, my take of what Ann Smith was trying to do was to do what she was advised to do, which was handle it in a certain way. So it was to disclose it, to release the publicly and minimize the risk. So she was attempting to do that during the meeting. And I want to make sure that there's been some of the stuff that's been, in the papers, et cetera, sort of sounded like she was trying to do something untoward. And I don't think that was it. I think she was trying to follow the direction of town council the document we saw that afternoon. And so, I don't think that she did anything wrong. I don't think you guys did anything wrong, so there's my 2 cents on it.
Well, thank you. I'm comfortable with town council's response. This is really not in relationship to the Board of Health's violation complaints. But I think that we were individually giving advisement that they should extend their meeting to really handle it properly. I don't think that I personally did not think that there was a real way to correct it during that meeting without the emails that were circulated being provided to the public.
So I would move that we authorize town council to submit this response as drafted.
There's a specific motion in your.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yes, there is.
I move to approve the draft response to the open meeting law complaint prepared by town council, along with any additions or revisions by the board if necessary. Oh, there aren't any. And to authorize town council to finalize and send the response to the complainant and the Division of Open Government consistent with our discussion this evening.
Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Thank you. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. That carries unanimously 5-0. Thank you.
Thank you all. Have a good evening.
Thanks, Janelle. Malcolm, do you have an update on the investigation of the African Meeting House vandalism?
Yes, my last discussion with the investigator, he's in contact with the district attorney's office and has gotten, he thinks, favorable responses from them. And he is now working with the state police. He is essentially coming down the end. And I miss Mr. Williams tonight.
Thank you very much. Are there any committee reports? Okay, just one last thing. We need to continue the public hearing for the Shorts Families HDC appeal
Motion to,
until April 29th. Oh, well, yes, I'm reopening the public hearing for the purposes of continuing it to April 29th.
I make a motion to continue the hearing till April 29th.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
That carries unanimously 5-0. And is there a motion to adjourn?
Yes.
Yes.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
That carries unanimously 5-0.
Aye.
Thank you.
I did say aye. I did.